Welcome to the Guitar Dads Podcast, a podcast for guitar people by guitar dads. This week, Motley's attorneys claim they have looks to kill, but is it the same old situation? And it's time to hit the blues road hard. We're riding the wings of salvation this week on the Guitar Dads Podcast. Now, the dudes who could use some blues salvation, Matt and Dave.
Hello, everybody. I'm Matt.
And I'm Dave, and welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome, welcome, and welcome. And as we say every week, thank you to our loyal listeners for checking in every week and all the content we've been giving you. And if you're new to the show, thanks for hanging out. We hope you come back next week for more. You know where you can find us at Guitar Dads Podcast on Instagram, where you can see clips of the show and all that stuff. Find us over on YouTube, search Guitar Dads. And also come over to Facebook and join the group at Guitar Dads Podcast over there. And most important, if you want to support the show, come over to patreon.com/Guitar Dads Podcast, where we have a number of tiers. If you want to support the show, we would love it. And we love our patrons. Thank you guys that are out there that are already patrons supporting the show. We couldn't do this without you guys. So thank you. Anything else, Matt?
All right. No, I think we're good to go. What's happening? We got another special guest here tonight.
We do have another special guest. We're very excited. This is this is somebody that we've been very excited for a while to be talking to. We heard about. So let me tell you a little about who this is. With his own unique take on the blues, Troy Redfern is unafraid to lay it down and melt your face. Hailing from England, we first heard the name Troy Redfern following our interview with the Commoners because they were touring with him. And if you like intense blues rock riffs full of passion, history, and style, you will soon become a huge fan of Troy's. So, Troy, thanks, man, for joining us. We appreciate you taking some time.
Hey, guys, how you doing? No, I appreciate you guys having me on. Thank you.
Yeah. We're really excited we have so much to dive into. So, we'll definitely get into everything we want to, you want to talk about your music and what you're playing, your rig and all that stuff. So yeah, but as we normally do every week, we usually do our news and notes segment, and we'll keep it quick this week because we'd love to get your take on a little piece that came out. And so let's get into the Dataverse. See if my sound effects are going to work. I don't think so. They're not working tonight. That's all right.
They're not working tonight?
That's all right. Everybody knows the Dataverse sound effect. They can
basically like
hear it in their heads.
It's like a rocket sound. It's like shoo.
It's like a
shoo. All right. There it is. All right. That's a bummer.
There you go.
Okay. Right. What's the news, Dave?
So this is on the Motley Crue front. As everybody knows, there's been a big rift in the band, and Mick, and he was out, and he, his side of things, he was, essentially kind of kicked out, even though he just retired from touring, but the band has kind of, released him from all his other duties. And it's a thing. We've talked about it a lot in the show. But recently a judge ruled that the band did not turn over all the documents to Mick that he was looking for in a timely manner. And when they did release some of the documents, some of them were still withheld. So this is, a little battle in the war, but this is a win for Mick right now. So we'll see where this case goes. Troy, have you followed this whole thing with that band?
Yeah, I was as a kid, when I was about 13, I was a huge Motley Crue fan. Shout the Devil era up until Dr. Feelgood, that kind of era. So yeah, I've been massively interested. I kind of lost, I still obviously followed what they're up to, those guys, but the new stuff really doesn't, musically doesn't interest me. I was really interested in hearing that Mick Mars was recording with Terry Bozzio on drums and Mike Keneally on guitar about 5 years ago. I was like super excited for that album, and I thought this new album he was going to put out was that. And I was like, wow, this is going to be pretty special with the ex-Zappa guys,
Yeah.
But it obviously isn't that.
It's not that.
It's not. And it was kind of a bit I was a little bit disappointed because it felt like generic rock again, sort of like. But anyway, so going back to the thing about Mick, he was the guy who put the money up to start the band. It was his contacts and his money that got those guys going. So it feels really odd, the whole situation, but the whole thing has been about that kind of tension and fallout and stuff. The whole it's part of their their DNA or whatever it is, the antagonism and kind of, but I feel sorry for the guy because, if it's a legacy thing and should obviously be part of that legacy, in whatever way that means financially for his kids or whatever, so it's a shame. It's a shame, and, it's good that you got the albums really because I can nostalgically go back to Shout at the Devil and listen to that in the car and be like, wow, this is such a great sounding rock album,
Really, yeah.
Without sort of like listening to the live performances of like.
Oh man, we've basically been on like a rant for like a year now about how bad the live performances sound and how Vince was awesome. I mean, some people are like, oh, he was never really that good. Like I don't know. I thought
it was great,
good.
even though
yeah.
And as a front man, he was
fantastic.
Back in those, along with Dave Lee Roth and all those guys,
exactly,
some amazing performers, and great vocalist. And it's only fairly recently because I think Generation Swine era they were still doing it, and I went to see him on that last tour they were going to do, and that sounded great. And I don't think that was on track. I think that sounded like it was being played to me. At least the vocals were definitely being sung.
Yep.
So it's only recently, and it's a shame, that there's not many guys. In fact, what we're seeing is that rock vocalist era of singer, sort of like they're coming to their sort of like 70s, and a lot of them, it's just I don't think your physicality can keep up with that.
It's true. It's
except for what's his name, the bass player from Deep Purple.
Oh who's playing with Joe Bonamassa?
Yeah. What's his name?
Oh God.
Yeah.
I know his name. I know his name.
It's on the tip of my tongue. Oh geez, now I'm gonna have to type it into the Google.
I'm gonna type it in too. Yeah.
But no, you're right. He's kind of unbelievable that he can still sing like that. I mean, you listen to those Black Country Communion things, and you're like, are you Glenn Hughes?
Glenn Hughes,
yeah.
There we go. Jeez.
You listen to those albums, and you're like, this guy's like 70 something years old. I mean, this is unbelievable. No, you're right. So Dave and I, we're Boston guys, so we're big Aerosmith.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't love Aerosmith, right?
Yeah,
you're into this kind of stuff, but he's another one. Like Steven Tyler, for the longest time, sounded amazing.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's only now well into his 70s. What did he just turn 75 or something, Dave?
Yeah.
Like well into his 70s. It's only now where he's starting to slow down. He obviously like really threw out his voice. Apparently, and Troy, you know this as a singer. He threw his voice out so badly that apparently he was bleeding. Like he was like his vocal cords were bleeding. Like, I've had vocal cord problems as a singer, but never like that.
No.
That just sounds horrible, right? So it's like these guys are getting to the end of their like life. But I will say, definitely not the same type of singing for sure, and that's probably why he's had the longevity. But Mick, right? Like how can Mick Jagger still sounds basically the same, right? They put out this new album, and it's like, this is unbelievable, right? So there are the anomalies, but I agree with you that, especially in that 80s era, there's very few from that 80s era that were doing those high kind of screechy vocals that can really still do it.
I don't think the body. I don't think the body at that age is not designed as a 70-year-old man. It's not designed to do that. It would be like Robert Plant's got the right idea with what he's done. He's been very clever with how he's kind of like shifted because you can't sing like he used to when he was in Zapp. So there's no point treading that ground again. So I think he's done he's ended up sort of doing something interesting musically and something vocally that's comfortable.
Yeah, instead of like just trying to like screech out like the other. So Vince, we give a hard time to. The other one who we give a very hard time to, but we love is Bon Jovi. I mean, he's another one that has just lost it.
I saw that footage, and I was kind of what it sounded to me like. I've met people in the past who, if some singers who aren't musicians, who aren't guitar players, or that they're just vocalists.
Yeah.
They learn how to sing in a key, and they almost memorize the key.
Yeah.
And if the band changes key, it's almost like their brain still wants to be up in the key that it was in,
Yeah.
and that's what it sounds
You
like
think
he's
that's
doing.
what's happening? Yeah, that's
Well,
actually good insight. That could be the case.
well, it sounds like he's not even in the right. It sounds like
Yeah.
his ear isn't hearing the key.
Yeah. I think you might be right
Maybe,
about that.
but
Yeah.
it's sad. And Roth, I was a huge Van Halen
Oh,
fan.
he's
I
another
think,
one. Yeah.
but unfortunately, again, his vocal, I think, even in his heyday, was hard to sing like that. I think it was. But I'll tell you what I did see the other day, which was interesting. I was a huge Steve Vai fan when I was
Oh,
younger,
yeah.
and
Yeah.
he was in Alcatraz, as you know, for
Yeah.
an album.
Yeah.
And so Graham Bonnet, I was aware of, and I played at a festival, and Graham was headlining about a
Oh.
month ago in December, and Graham, I don't know what age he is. He's in his 70s. What the video footage, I remember getting VHS cassettes of the Alcatraz live in Tokyo, and watching that over and over again. And Graham's really struggled.
Yeah.
When I saw him play about a month ago, he's in his 70s, and he sounded better than he did in the
Oh,
80s,
wow.
which was
Wow.
interesting. And he got a cold, and he was ill, and he wasn't sure whether he was going to perform. But I was shocked how Graham pulled it out, because I always thought with Graham, he always wrote vocal lines that were just on the edge of what he could sing.
Yeah. Yeah.
At
Yeah.
the best of times.
Yeah.
So
At the best of times. Yeah. You know who I fear, and is Jay Buchanan from Rival Sons. Are you familiar with them, Troy? You know the band
I do know. Yeah, I
before
know
we
who.
Yeah.
recorded. Yeah.
And he, Jay, he's unbelievable, but he does sing at the edge of his range. And
Yeah.
he actually gave an interview, and somebody said to him, like, "Are you sure you want to do that? Because when you're older," and he's like, "Fuck you." Like, I am going to sing like this when I'm older. I don't give a shit what you say to me. But you wonder, like, with that type of a ability that he has, and when you see him live, he's like a force to be reckoned with. It just like he just like washes over you, this vocal ability. And it's like, is he going to be able to keep this up? I hope he does, for his sake, because we think he's one of the best in the game.
Well, luckily by the time he's old, there'll be so much AI influence over
good point.
society. Things, it's going to be a different landscape in 10 years. So
yeah, it'll be a different landscape. Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah,
but well, actually, maybe that's a good transition over to you, Troy, because you got this kind of no holds barred vocal style yourself, right?
Well, I kind of like, I don't consider myself to be a vocalist, really. I'm a guitar player who kind of sings.
Who sings with them, accompanies himself. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just I've always been a guitar player. I think as like a guitar player, but on the last 3 albums, I've focused a bit more on my vocals and keys and things like that, and trying to get things. Again, some of it's still in the higher register.
Yeah, no, it sounds great, man. No,
but yeah, it's just I've just fallen into it because I've started my own band under my own name, so I just I kind of had to do it.
Yeah.
Right,
you got to take the reins and just do it. No, I think your vocal style is great, but yeah, I mean, you're just killing it. You're not holding back, which I think is great. I mean, that comes across right when you sing like that. It just does. So
yeah, no, it's nice to it's nice to get recordings like that, and then to be able to go out and do it,
Yeah.
And I'm down in, like I said, you're a guitar player, so I'm tuned down to C, so I'm pretty low down there.
Yeah, it makes it a little easier. I was going to ask you about the tunings. Yeah.
As the years go on, I use my Digitech drop a few, notch down every year.
You just keep going down. You're like, wait a minute.
each year,
I'm all the way down here. Oh my God. So what do you think, Dave? Like, where do we want to start with Troy? I mean, Troy, maybe start off. Yeah, go ahead, Dave. Go ahead.
Give us like the quick, like the whole, like the origin story. Like, how did you get into music, and how long have you been playing for? And then when did you decide, like, this is what you want to do?
And where the heck did you how the heck did you develop the slide playing that you have, man?
So music, I think I've got 3 older brothers, the youngest of them being 10 years older than me. So the eldest of those 3 had a good record collection. So I remember listening to 50s, like early Elvis, and then eventually Queen, I think through him. But I'll tell you what it was. It was 1980, so I would have been 6, and I wanted to go and see Flash Gordon, the film that had just come out in 1980.
Nice.
And my parents couldn't take me for some reason, so my brother bought me this single by Queen, Flash. Do you remember that single?
Yeah, I don't know if I
Flash.
remember.
Right.
Yeah.
It was a soundtrack to the Flash Gordon movie, but I bought that, and then I kind of became obsessed with Queen at like 6, 7.
Oh,
Got
nice.
Night at the Opera, all that kind of stuff,
Oh,
and
nice.
then saw Back to the Future when I was 10. Saw the guitar scene, and that inspired me to want to play guitar. And I saw Van Halen cassette there, so I went to the shop, bought a Van Halen cassette in 1984.
Nice.
Got my first guitar, and then sort of like slowly, found out about Hendrix, found out about the Beatles. Slowly sort of like, because then there was obviously there was no internet. You felt things out from people you knew, or people you saw in a shop or something like that. So it was a very different way of discovering music, and it was a harder way, I think, back then, because
It
you
was.
either had to have friends who were really connected, or had a good collection of music, or you just had to kind of like take a risk in a shop.
Yeah.
So started playing guitar, and then eventually the open tuning thing came when I was through sort of an ex-girlfriend's dad showed me how to open tune guitar, sort of modally, standard, minor, all the different types of tunings you could do, and then turned me on to Little Feat. So
Nice.
and I think a bit before that, when I started playing guitar, someone gave me a Sunhouse vinyl, and I would have been about 14 then, so I kind of discovered that type of blues.
Okay. Yeah.
So there were little things like along the way that kind of like informed, you know, or opened doors to different types of styles of music. Because I live in quite a rural area, so you had to rely on people to sort of show you stuff,
Okay.
and then just over the years, sort of like gradually brought more of the slide playing in. I played in a band before my own called the Electric Blues Reaction, and that was all lots of slide playing.
Yeah.
To the point now where I'm pretty much, when I go out and play live, it's all open tunings. I don't take a standard tune guitar anymore.
Really?
I did
Interesting.
about 2 years ago. I was still taking the Les Paul out, which was in standard, but now it's any tunes that were in standard, I've transferred them over to open, and I kind of feel really at home in that. And it's super limiting because the tuning I use is called Orkney tuning, which is kind of like, in C, it's C G C G C with the D on the top on the thin
Oh,
string.
okay.
So it's like a suspended chord, like
Yeah.
a. So
Yep.
it's that,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
which is nice because it's neither major nor minor. But what it does, it super limits chord voicings. So you can't, so you have to think in terms of register more, or octave more than voicing. So
Yep.
you can slide octaves around, fifths and fourths and stuff like that. But you can, exotic voicings aren't really an option because of the way
Yeah.
it's stretched.
Right.
Yeah, like that's
But
the feel you're getting. Like you're just going to get that feel if you're in that tuning. You're not going to be able to like drastically change the voice. Yeah,
no,
voicings.
no,
Yeah,
no, you
yeah,
can't. No, but so that definitely limits you. But within those limitations, it's quite nice because it's a bit like when you're recording. I don't know if you're the same, but if you've got tons of plugins in a folder, that you can use in your recordings, you get kind of overwhelmed.
Oh yeah, yeah,
If you've got four or five, great. With those, you'll make something work. And I think it's the same with like a tuning like that. It's limiting, but then you know your parameters of what you
yeah.
could do with it.
That's actually really interesting. And I've heard about that as like sometimes like you hear sometimes about like famous producers doing that kind of thing. Like, no, you're using this guitar and this amp. Like just
Yeah,
deal like and these pedals or whatever. And it's like just come up with something. And I've also
yeah,
heard that with like drums, like bare bones drum kit, right? Like
yeah,
not a giant bunch of toms and a giant bunch
yeah,
of things. And
yeah,
that limitation kind of leads to this creativity. It's
yeah,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah. It forces you to do something with what you got, doesn't it? Instead of
Yeah.
desperately needing something else to do your thing. Which is we all do as guitar players. We all
Oh,
want
we
different
do. Yeah.
pedals or gear, or and
Yeah.
it really isn't that, is it? We all know it's not that, but
We know, but
Well,
we
did
love
you
it
feel
anyway.
initially when you started playing, when you started using this tuning, did you feel initially that you were kind of in a smaller box, and the more you experimented with it, that box kind of expanded and it just kind of gave you your own style? Or were you
yeah,
very
yeah.
comfortable right off the bat with this tuning and just it gave you so many ideas to go with, and it just, because of what you said,
Definitely.
as limiting as
Yeah.
it was,
Yeah.
it's almost less limiting because you kind of have to stay within yourself in that.
100%. It's limiting, but I feel comfortable there. I kind of use open G tuning sometimes down in A, or up in A, sorry, and which is like
Okay.
the muddy waters kind of
Muddy
like
water.
thing.
Yeah. Yep.
And what happens with that tuning is that you go to those idioms, you go to those kind of phrases that we all know,
Yeah.
and you can't help it because they're there. You know,
That's just
It just sounds so good. That's
it's
like
yeah.
if I'm an open G, I'm playing Stones riffs all day. Like that.
Stone drifts or muddy
right.
waters. So what this does, it stops you doing. You can't do that really. Well, you
Yeah.
can, but it's very stretched. It would be very uncomfortable, and it would, it wouldn't be very organic. It would be so. So this stops you doing that. So it's nice. There's another guy. Chris Whitley used to use this tuning, and Chris, I'm a massive fan of. I think, he's such a was such an astonishing artist, I think, and he used to use just vast amounts of tunings. But this Orkney tuning was one of his tunings,
Interesting. Yeah.
and
Really interesting.
so that's how I got that. That's how I was influenced to use this tuning by Chris Whitley, and then just stuck with this particular one, capoing it or.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like I said, it's limiting. But what's nice about it, like on the standard tune guitar, I know my scales, I know my modes, I know that stuff. I know those patterns. On this, that doesn't, it doesn't,
It doesn't
it's not.
apply. Yeah.
No, but so what I think is it like linearly. Is that word? I can't say it in a linear type
I don't know.
of way.
You're the British one. It's your language. Jeez.
In a linear kind of way across one string.
Yeah.
So in the way that you would think of intervals, sharp 4 is Lydian, or a flat second is going to give you the Phrygian vibe. So when I'm improvising, which within us in our set, there's quite a lot of improvising within sections.
Yeah.
I approach the guitar in that way. I approach it. I think of one string because you've got the C and the G and the C and the G and C. So you've got lots of repetition. As long as you know your intervals, you can
get
be
there.
creative,
Yeah.
and you can be creative. You can. This guitar is really hard to play because the strings are quite tight. And the action's not. It's okay, but with the slide, then it's all good.
Yeah. With the slide, no problems. I know.
Yeah.
Isn't that always the joke? Like you pick up a guitar that's like, this thing's terrible to play. Oh, slide guitar.
Right.
Yeah.
But to Matt's question though, or to Matt's point earlier about your slide playing, a lot of your slide playing sounds very unique. And I don't know if it's the tuning that kind of lends itself to that, or is that just the style that you've adopted? But you are an absolutely killer slide player.
Thank you, but I think it's a combination of that tuning and not ever learning anyone's solo. So I've not got a point of reference.
Right.
Do you see what I mean? I've got friends. One in particular, I used to know a guy who went to the Guitar Institute, and he had his own style when he went before he left, and he came back a phenomenal chops player. Jazz metal, super fast, super accurate, but no voice at all. It was they completely wiped out his unique character on the instrument.
Interesting.
And I think that's because if you learn, it's a tricky one. If you learn everything that other people are doing, you can't help but internalize that into your vocabulary. So when you improvise, something other than what you would do would come out because those licks going to come out.
Yeah.
So fortunately or unfortunately, I've never done that, so I can't put out those things. I can't because they're not there. So that's a blessing and a curse. Because if someone asked me to learn something quite complex, it would take me. I wouldn't be a fast guy to pick things up from other people. So yeah, it's just, and also given the fact that this is in this tuning, it's kind of there's an element of randomness there as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So does that mean like you didn't? Because a lot of us as guitar players, spend some time playing covers. Now that's all. I did an original music stint and then kind of gave up on the rock star dreams, and now I play in cover. Now I play in cover bands.
Yeah.
I just won right now, but like how did you kind of avoid all that, or did you not? And then you just had like did you?
I did. Well, I've done cover sets.
Okay.
I've played cover sets, but I wouldn't. I would never sort of want to nail it in the tribute kind of way, the
Okay,
tribute band.
so you did your own kind of spin on covers with your own kind of voice. Interesting.
Kind of, yeah. And the solos would always be a free for all.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
would
You
just be
wouldn't you wouldn't be playing like the note for note solos
no.
like when I play Don't Stop Believing. You
Oh,
gotta play
there's
that
certain ones.
solo.
I think there's certain ones that are so iconic you kind of
You
have
kind of
to. I think
have
there's
to,
ones
yeah.
where you yeah.
Yeah.
But I would like to, to do the sort of like more freeform and be a bit sort of creative with it.
That's
And then
awesome.
the Electric Blues Reaction, the band that I did before mine, was kind of a similar sort of thing to what I'm doing now. But I had a singer who was a drummer,
Oh, okay.
and we did some covers in that set, some blues, traditional blues tunes, but like on steroids, that kind of thing. And yeah, and I suppose what I'm doing now is kind of brought over from that band, really.
Yeah.
But I just like, I've always loved, even as a kid, I remember when I was about sort of like 15 or something like that, sort of writing stuff, putting stuff together. It wasn't great, but it was always that sort of drive to do that.
That's
Not for,
interesting. Yeah.
and not for anything. Like, for example, when I was 16, I got my first Fostex 4-track.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to record music to hear it back because I wanted to be able to record something and then listen to it. And
Yeah.
we were just talking before we came on air, and that's still a thing, I love making music just to make it, for myself.
Yeah. Wow.
And I've done some of that's on Bandcamp. I've got lots of my old kind of music, and it's about 14 albums or something on there.
Oh, wow.
But there's all sorts of space prog, kind of all sorts of interesting stuff. Yeah, and it's nice because that stuff was just tucked away there. So if people want to discover that stuff and have a listen to it, but it gives a different angle on what I'm about. Because I think the last 3 albums I focused on one aspect.
Yeah.
But my musical hero is Frank Zappa. That's the guy
Okay.
that I'm totally into.
Yeah, and Frank didn't have like a set thing, right? That he did whatever he wanted.
Was so
Yeah.
unique.
Yeah. He was pretty special, I think, because he had the blues roots sort of knowledge, and the avant-garde and the kind of like the rock thing and the classical thing, and just the having players like Vi sort of like doing this sort of impossible guitar part stuff, it's just crazy, it's just some amazing melodies, in that stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he did what he wanted unapologetically, and and such a unique talent.
Yeah.
It would be hard to replicate that in the modern era. I don't think you're going to find a musician like him, for a long time.
No, you come across things, that interesting sort of stuff, that stuff that's kind of like, a bit left field, is you find sort of bands doing stuff on Bandcamp under the radar, and, there are people out there doing, things like in that, not to that scale, but, that kind of thing, that there's an underground of that, sort of stuff kicking around. And I think the jam band scene sort of like over the last few years has become a thing, isn't it?
Sure.
Yeah.
That scene, like like bands like Government Mule, they kind of like they have extended solos, and and people love that. It's so people still, I think people do like interesting sort of guitar solos and stuff like that. It's always that thing of like people complain about long guitar solos, but I think that Government Mule's audience obviously love it.
Oh yeah, and Tedeschi Trucks. They go on their jams. Maybe not quite like Government Mule, but they definitely have their jams. And, I mean, we love it. We're kind of here for all of it, That's what we want to hear. We're like, where's the guitar solo? Jeez.
But to your point earlier, Troy,
got
before,
upset. Oh, go ahead, Dave. Yeah, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Matt. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say about the guitar solo. So, Jason Isbell, you must know who he is, Troy. Amazing singer-songwriter out of the American South. I forget where exactly. He's an amazing singer-songwriter, but he's kind of lauded as this amazing guitarist, and he is. And you listen to his albums, and there's only like really like tasteful solos, not any like long drawn out solos or anything. And then like in his live sets, he just has like these kind of extended solo sections, which is awesome.
Right.
And I'm like, I'd like a little bit more of that on the album.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there is a balance. Like, you don't just want like, that's why they have live albums if you want to listen to
Yeah.
But there is a balance where it's like you got to give a little taste of what you're gonna get live, but don't give away all the goods on the album.
Yeah.
Do you approach it like that? It sounds like you do, based on what I've heard. So
I think we've been careful with this last couple of albums to be more like for this one that's coming out in May. We just trimmed away all the fat, so they were, we were wanting to get people's ears on it, really.
Yeah.
So that was the name of the game with this album. So it was concise songs, 3.5 minutes.
Yeah.
The solos in there, but nothing sort of like no long solos or anything.
Yeah.
Because I'm still trying to build my thing. You know what I mean? And so you want radio play. You need things like that to get it out there.
Yeah.
And if I do like 10-minute songs, I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, you're not going to get there. No, I think you're right, especially in this world where it's all about like put the snippet on Instagram or TikTok.
Yep.
You kind of want to get the flavor out there in like 30 seconds, basically. So you're right. If it takes 30
spans these days are so small,
and if it takes 30 seconds to get anywhere, then you kind of dead on arrival. Sadly, that's
It's just, it's a shame. It's one of the, I keep seeing this stuff about people sort of like the desperate for streams or desperate, and in fact, I just, before we came on, I was listening to this guy talking about Zappa. Actually, it was just like a little thing came up on my YouTube, and he was talking about artistry and music and art and what art is and what music for perception is, so if people want to make music to appeal to people, so you're creating art for someone else to appeal to them, for numbers, for views.
It's not there,
and that's not art. That's not art, and that's what he was talking about Zappa, because he said Zappa wasn't that. This was what the whole thrust of this little thing was, and it's interesting. It really is, an interesting sort of thing, because again, I was listening to this. I can't remember the guy's name, Paul something. He's a really famous Spotify guy. Gets over 1.5 million streams. Is it a day? He's got billions of streams.
Oh, wow.
And so I thought I'd check his music out, because this guy's giving advice on how to get these streams, and the music sounded like the sort of thing an 11-year-old girl might listen to.
Oh, geez.
Like, it was kind of like a summary ukulele hip hop rap by a white guy, and that's what gets and that guy's got billions of streams. So. Yeah, I wouldn't want to even do that. If that meant I got millions of streams, I wouldn't want to even get millions of streams. That's not what.
Because you're not being genuine to yourself. Like we talked about earlier, Troy. But before we started recording, like if you're not, you said you're very passionate about what you play, and like you want to be true to yourself. And we talked about Jay Buchanan saying the same thing. Like when Rival Sons is up there playing, and like a lot of bands, they're up there for themselves. They're up there playing what they're doing what they want to do. Yeah, but that passion is what comes across to the fans, and that's what makes that experience, right? So I think it's so important.
Yeah, but do that. I can, and this is the whole thing about like, this is like the age old thing, like, oh, bands are selling out, like Metallica with the Black Album was a sellout and all that stuff. And it's like, you do what you need to do, but got to stay true to yourself. Like, I think like what you just described, Troy, is the perfect kind of balance. Like, I don't need to have like a 3-minute guitar solo on there, but I give you like, 20 seconds and you get the idea, so so it's like, I think that makes a lot of sense, but I agree with you, like to just totally change your sound and just do a different thing, like
for numbers is scary.
I mean, to tell you the truth, like we've talked about it on this podcast. Like Dave and I have had conversations like, man, maybe we should talk about this, maybe we should talk about that, and I'm like, well, I don't care about that, so why I'm not going to talk about it. I don't care if it gets clicks. You know what I mean?
Well, you need to attract. It's about attracting the people who want to hear what you want to say, and if people connect with that, those are the people who will connect with you anyhow, aren't they? They'll find you, and
that's
they'll be
right.
Like, that's what I want to hear. This conversation, instead of trying to second guess, because if you're second guessing people you don't know, that's the same with writing music.
It is the
if
same,
you're thinking about an audience that how can you see into their mind and what they would like, so you can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just, you've got to believe in it when you're doing it, I think, with music or anything, and then put it out into the world. And if people, like it or connect with it, great. And if they don't, it's just, you've made something for that you should be proud of anyhow.
I think that's
Right.
true. Like if you
Yeah,
look if you look like historically at some of the greatest artists of all time, they've had those like things where they've just gone off the rails and they've missed. You know what I mean? Like, you can
Yeah,
name any great band, and
yeah,
I don't love every single Zeppelin song like I do,
yeah,
like, so it's like there's misses that they do because they try different things, and maybe they loved it. I
yeah,
didn't connect with it for whatever reason. Like that, there's
yeah,
always that. Like the Beatles, obviously they have controversial albums. It's like
yeah,
that's how it goes. Like that's what artists do, So
yeah,
yeah,
Yeah, and when
yeah,
you listen to interviews with the big time producers who have produced all the records that everybody knows, there's a common theme. Those producers let the bands do kind of their thing. They don't want to
yeah,
they don't want to step on their toes too much. They want to guide them and help them a little
yeah,
bit, but they at the end of the day, it's about letting the band do their thing, let their sound come out. And that's why they're so successful. I think if you
yeah,
have a producer in there saying, well, I think you should, that part should be changed a little bit, that's too long, maybe the drum needs to be like this, or the guitar
yeah,
needs to sound like that, whatever, you're not going to get necessarily that sound from the band that you love.
yeah, yeah,
So Troy, tell
yeah.
us, tell us, speaking of that, tell us about the new album coming out. I think is it May that it's coming out? The latest
Yeah,
new one?
17th of May.
17th of May.
17th.
You got a single out now that is just kick ass, and we talked about it briefly, but it kind of hits you over the head. And so I'm excited to hear the rest of the album. But yeah, like tell us about like what was the process with this album, and what's going on with it.
So the album I recorded before, the one I put out last year, was called The Wings of Salvation, and that was recorded like super fast. I think it was written from scratch, no ideas, and to finished product in about 4 weeks, or just under 4 weeks.
Wow.
And it was just a great way of working, because as soon as you have an idea, guitar line, or a chord progression, vocal line, no sooner as that happened, we had got a fleshed out kind of like, because I was working with this guy called Dave Marks, who's like just a all-round genius guy.
Awesome.
We would have something like that was fleshed out and programmed drums, bass line in, and you could hear the song super fast of what it was going to be. It wasn't finished, but the demo was like super high quality. So when I came to record this one, I was like, well, I wanted to record it in the same sort of time frame. So I got the same guys in. I thought, right, Paul Stewart, there's a band over here called The Feeling, who are kind of like quite a well-known chart band. I got Paul in to play drums, and yeah, we did the same thing again. So it's what I like about that process of working super fast or creating super fast is just it's unfiltered, or there's less filtering and less overthinking. So the initial ideas that you come up with that are hopefully inspired, that you I'm not a natural writer. I'm just a guy who plays guitar. You know what I mean? I sit there with a guitar, strum, I'll get some chords, and then sing some vocal lines, ad lib, and then that turns into the song. So I'm one of those guys, not a Nashville writer, or anything who sits down methodically trying to write a hit. So it is kind of like, it's interesting working with someone like me, working with someone like Dave, who's, his brain must be the opposite. He's a very creative guy as well, but he's super organized. And yeah, I thought that worked on the last album, so we do it on this one, and I think he got what I was about on the last album. So when we did this one, he kind of knew what we were doing. He knew the process. He knew what we tried to sound like. We want the overall arc of the album. And I think he did a great job, and Joe Webb, the guy who mixed it, I think did a fine job as well, because there's no drum samples these days. All the bands that, are sort of doing anything, it's all drum samples, so the drummer plays the part and the samples are overlaid,
Yep.
And that seems to be the template to move forward. If your album sounds like Pro Tools rock, you're doing well, and the ethos of the producer on this album was the opposite of that. He said he wanted it to be real,
Yep.
Which I was concerned about. I was like, are you sure this is a good idea? Are you sure we shouldn't just toe the line and go down the Pro Tools?
Yeah.
But no, we went down. So the everything you hear is real, which is nice and satisfying, and it has been sort of got played and stuff. So it's nice that it's kind of it's done what it was supposed to do.
No, that's great that you're just doing it all real and live, and that's awesome. No, I think and look, like, maybe not everybody picks up on it, but like people like us kind of pick up on that, right? It's like, you get used to hearing those sounds, and you're like, oh, this is a little bit different, and this is, they must be doing this, this must be real drums, so no, that I think we appreciate it. So.
Yeah, I think it's harder. I think I think if you've got a good drum samples, the foundation, as of all of this is a good drum sound. So I think if you're using samples, it's kind of like easier because you've got that as your foundation to start with.
Yeah,
I think for Joe to get a good drum sound, that's testament to his mix. Not more than anything, I think he's a great guy, great bunch of guys, and I think that's what I've learned over this last couple of albums. If you get with a good bunch of guys who are on the same page, who are nice people, who want to help you move forward, that's a great thing.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's great. That's really exciting. So yeah, well, we can't wait to hear it. The new single that was out. Well, you just put it out in January, right? Did it just come out a couple weeks ago, or am I wrong?
No, it's a couple of weeks.
A couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Awesome. So let's see. We're coming up on time.
Take us through the rig, Troy.
But yeah, we're coming up on time. But let's talk about the rig. Like maybe talk about with the new album. What was the guitar rig that you were using?
So it was mainly. I said to you guys before we came on air, it was mainly a Magnatone Twilighter, which I got a couple of years back, and that thing's an absolute beast of an amp.
Yeah.
But the pedals, the main sound, because I run that sort of clean. It's obviously loud, so there's a bit of breakup. But I use a vintage '80s Rat pedal, the Proco Rats.
The Procos, love them. Yeah. But you have a vintage '80s. You have an old original '80s one. Awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I've been through a few of them, and this one it's a black face. I've always been after a white face, but I've had a couple of black faces, and this one kind of sounds the best out of that bunch. So I've sold the rest. But the gain on top of that, I'll use a Hamida distortion, which is if you've heard of the Zen Drive pedal.
Yep.
It's the same company. Back in the day, they made a higher gain version of the Zen Drive, which is called just a distortion pedal. And I use that as the boost. And so that's kind of my tone, really. Those two pedals, you got the amp, but I think that the pedals color the sound as much as the amp does, And I'm using, well, for live, I'm using this guitar, this 1929 National, with a Marcus Berry pickup in there. You can see there's an old pickup on there,
that's awesome.
Which is from the 80s.
Yeah, that's
so. This pickup, they made them in the 80s. And you can get them on Reverb. They're about £600, so about $800 or whatever, But they're the only pickup that don't feed back with high gain on one of these kind of guitars. If you want to go through a distortion pedal, it's not going to happen unless you use one of those type of units.
Awesome.
So that's the kind of sound, and then sort of rig wise live, I go through I use delay and remember the old Akai Headrush 2 pedals, the big blue units.
I don't, but sounds interesting.
No, I don't either.
They were sort of like a tap delay looper.
Oh, okay. All right.
So when I'm sort of playing live, I've got at least 3 different types of delay sort of on the board. There's a Keeley Echoes.
Nice.
Nice.
And a DD7, and
love it.
So the DD7's on the whole time just as a shadow delay, just like 2 little repeats, and then the Keeley Echoes does like a filtered flange delay, and then I've got the tap delay, which is like a pure digital delay off the Akai, and that's made for the jam sort of stuff, So I'm sort of like bringing sort of like it's textural stuff,
Yeah.
And I love that, I love using delays. I'm just trying to think what else. I use the Digitech Whammy, actually.
Oh, you do?
Okay. Yeah.
Awesome.
Which is great for this because you're limited to 12 frets on this thing.
Oh yeah.
You can get up into the higher octave with that pedal.
Yeah, that's really great.
So that's really good fun, and I'm trying to think what else we used.
The Twilighter, can you just tell us, the Twilighter is basically a clean amp, right? It's kind of like a Fender-y type of amp, right? So you just kind of have this clean platform. Do you like crank it up so it gives its own overdrive, or how do you usually run it?
Live, I'm on about 2, and I'm talking sort of like, and that's monstrous on
That
stage.
must be insane.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had no sound engineers tell me to turn down yet, though, which is weird because I'm there thinking they're going to say something.
That is
They're
weird.
Say,
That is
no one says it.
You're cranking them up. Oh, that's great.
Because what you have to do with that, with the resonator, because what I do, I set the amp across in the back corner, facing kind of across the stage slightly.
Yep.
Okay.
Because this will still feed back, so you have to kind of get the standing waves to go a certain way to get out of the way,
Yes.
And and it has to be a certain, as you know, and it has to be a certain volume to sort of get some juice in it, and to feel it, and you can't really have much fold back because of the resonator, the sound goes into the body of the metal guitar through the fold back, and then you're going to feed back. So it is a balancing act, but it's always been cool. I've never had any sort of major issues live, but what's nice about the stereo magnetone is that most sound engineers are happy to stereo mic it and put it into
that's great.
speakers either side, so you get a really wide kind of spread.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But like you said, it is pretty much clean. But it's a strange tone because I kind of half of me hears a bit of a Vox thing in it. AC30.
Oh.
It's like if a Vox and a Fender kind of had a baby. I know that's like, it shouldn't be like, they're so different.
Yeah,
Right.
But it's certainly not. It's certainly not as bright and sparkly as a Fender.
Okay, all right.
So it's a bit darker than that, but maybe not as dark as a Vox. That's my take on it.
All right. Yeah. Oh man, I need. Geez.
But you would, if you plugged into one, if you went to a shop and you plugged into one, you probably wouldn't come away without it.
Yeah, it's one of those.
Walk home with it,
exactly.
exactly.
I have a tendency to do that with a very expensive amp, so maybe I should stay away from Magneto. Because I'll plug in and be like, "Nope, here's my credit card. Here you go."
Yeah. Well, I tried it before I bought it. I tried. Oh God, a 2-Rock, the signature reverb.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And I wasn't for what I do. It didn't feel right.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
It sounded great, but back in the day I used to use like massive Mark IVs and things that had lots of switches and sort of like on the back, it was pretty vast as it was more on the back than the front, but it felt a little bit like that. It was in that territory of like having to dial in every room.
Yeah.
And whereas the Magnetone is literally kind of got 3 knobs, bass, middle, and treble, and even they don't do that much.
Oh, really?
There's not much. There's no sweep in it. It's not like,
amp,
yeah. That's right. I'm looking at it now. I'm looking at it on the website. Yeah. There's just bass, middle, treble. That's it.
And they don't do much. The treble doesn't go super sharp when you turn it up the full, and it doesn't go sort of muffly when you turn it the other way. It's kind of biased in a certain spectrum.
Now, is there a vibrato on it to use the vibrato?
Yeah. You got the stereo vibrato. Yeah, you got the.
That's
so
awesome.
It's almost like a panic. It pans it between both speakers, so it does when you stood in front of it. It sounds like the sound of shifting in front of you.
Cool. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, that sounds
Maybe
great.
Matt does need to get one of these amps so I can hear it and play through it myself.
I need to go buy. Well, I'm a Slash fan, so I always knew about Magnetone when the Slash news came out. I'm like, oh, interesting. Not that I'm going to buy the Slash Jam because it's like $8,000 or something. So,
Yeah.
but
you can play just plugging into this clean with the because it's got a really nice reverb and that tremolo. Just those two effects.
Yeah. I bet it's
sounds super vibey.
Yeah.
It just makes you. It takes you to like that kind of place immediately. Just this, and you respond to the sound. So your playing changes because of what you're hearing.
Totally,
which is cool.
That's what a great amp does, in my opinion.
Just very influential on you.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really great. So what? Tell us a couple more about a couple more guitars. You have I looked on your website earlier. You got all kinds of crazy guitars. But mainly you get the resonator going, but then you get some other really cool. Like what's this one I see on the site? Oh geez, like a black, Is it black with like a lot of buttons on it? Well, there's the red one. Okay, I was going to ask you about that red one too.
Oh yeah, what is
that?
What is that thing?
This is a Tesco.
Oh, Tesco. Okay,
Orbiter. It's an Orbit 4, I think.
Okay. Yep.
And
like
when I went
12
to
pickups on it.
it's got 4 pickups and switch in and outs for each of them and phase, but mainly I'm using this back pickup. It gets too warm, it gets too round if I use these. It's got a nice kind of bite to it. But it's quite a heavy guitar. It's mahogany, and the neck is huge.
Really?
So when I went to buy it, I thought it was going to be one of those really sort of like light, cheap guitars, and it's the opposite. It's a monster, and this is kind of super baseball bat territory, which is great. I love.
You like the baseball bats? Huh?
You like the
Nice.
thicker necks? Okay, yeah.
I didn't used to. When I was younger, I kind of liked the super skinny necks, but I got a Les Paul gold top historic, one of the custom shop 57s.
Yeah, those are the baseball bats, right? Yeah,
and that turned me onto those, and that feels super comfortable in that kind of like that part of your hat. It just feels great to me. So I've got to ever since then I've enjoyed a thicker neck as opposed to the sort of 60s thin ones.
Yeah, that's
But I think the one you're talking about is that the silver tone.
Silvertone. Maybe it is a Silvertone.
Oh, that might be the Silvertone. Yeah.
There's like 5 buttons on it. Yeah, 5 pots on it.
That's it.
Yeah,
That's it.
so that's the Silvertone. Oh, awesome.
Yeah, and that's got the the silver foil pickups, but they're kind of
gold foil style.
That's what attracted me.
Yeah,
that's what attracted me to those. The pickups, the gold foil or silver foil pickups are super high output, so they're 11K, which is more than most humbuckers. Sort of even the super distortion. Although super distortion, I think are about 13, aren't they? They're quite. But anyway, it's in that territory.
But it's still pretty hot stuff. Okay, yeah.
It's hot, but what's weird about it is that when you strum across the strings, this separation. So normally with a high output pickup, it just becomes like a block sound,
Yeah.
But they're super hot, but they're also really defined when you play chords.
That's cool.
Which is not, a nice combination.
That is a vibe. I would call that a vibey guitar.
Yeah.
It's a very
and like I love
guitar.
how the pick guard is on there. I mean, it's not really a pick guard. I guess it is a pick guard. How the white kind of comes down. Yeah, it's really cool, man. It's a cool guitar. I love it.
But they're nice. Again, they're not fluid instruments in the way that you can't just play like butter. They don't play.
You gotta fight them.
You have to. Yeah,
fight them.
yeah.
Yeah,
and that's what's cool. Again, like I said, because most of them are tuned to sort of like open tunings, then you've got the slide thing going on. So if you want to do anything quick, then you can just sort of zip down the string as opposed to kind of like doing legato or something.
Yeah. I'm like, you're not gonna be doing any legatos. Yeah, that's really funny. It's like this is the kind of guitars you play. I love that. That's awesome. Awesome, Dave. What do we think? How are we doing on time? We're probably up against.
Oh yeah,
it.
we're coming. Yeah, we are coming up on time. We have a lot more to talk about, which we're going to bring over to our patrons over on Patreon. So as we kind of wrap up, Troy, what do you got? What's coming up in the plans in the next few months? And we know we talked about the record coming out. When are you going to be touring this thing? And what else you got going on?
So the new album comes out on the 17th of May.
Yeah.
So if people want to go on troyredfern.com, there's like a pre-order there if they want to order the album or check out anything to do with what I'm up to. I'll be touring the UK in June.
Awesome.
That's not been the tour's not actually been announced yet, but that's going to be imminent in the next couple of weeks. And then it's kind of festival season, and we're just setting up another tour for something that's hopefully coming out at the kind of around November time.
Okay.
But there'll be singles dropped. I think there'll be another couple of singles before the album comes out as well. So there's plenty of stuff coming out.
Yeah, and that's just the way.
Forward to that.
That's just the way it works. Now we've talked to a few artists about that, about dropping the singles leading up to the album release, building that excitement.
Yeah.
That's just the way it goes these days, right? Like no one just releases an album.
No, but it's
just the way it goes. Sorry, I'm not having a coughing.
Yeah. No, it's just trying to get as many ears on it as possible, and giving it as much of a chance, because you spend so much time and money sort of making the thing. You want as much as many people to be aware of it as possible.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And where can people check? So you mentioned your website, Troy Redfern. Is it troyredfern.com, right? Or
Yep.
troyredfern.com.
And what about your socials too, on Instagram and where are you there?
Yeah, if you just type in Troy Redfern on Facebook, Instagram, what else, on Twitter, I think, or X.
Yeah.
All those things. Yeah, you should find me if you just type my name into any of those things.
Yeah.
Very
I
good.
love it. I love it. You got some stuff on YouTube as well. You get some videos up there.
Yeah, there's some videos. Yeah, I don't put too much up there, but I put the main videos up on that.
Yeah, awesome, man, awesome.
Yeah, so go check it out, guys. We when we first heard about you, Troy, we couldn't wait to get you on here and talk about your music and really dig deep into your stuff. You are one killer player. We're sure our listeners are going to absolutely love hearing you. So, guys, go check out Troy Redfern. And we're so appreciative of your time. Thanks for coming on. And real quick, if you're a new listener to the podcast, come back next week for more content. We got lots more interviews coming up. You can check us out at Guitar Dads Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. And we are going to take this thing over to Patreon now. If you want to go over to patreon.com/Guitar Dads Podcast, you can support the show over there and get some extra content. But for now, Troy, thank you. And Matt,
thank you.
Now, that was this week's Guitar Dads podcast.
That's it. Troy, thanks so much for hanging out.
See you guys.
We wish you continued success. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you.
That's the Guitar Dads Podcast. Keep rocking live. We'll catch you on the flip.